The Xynarix hive had stood for 10,000 years, a monument to order and precision. Its crystalline towers stretched into the purple sky of their home world, each structure perfectly aligned with ancient star charts. Inside the royal chambers, Queen Vesra ruled with the cold efficiency her species was known for throughout the galaxy. She had crushed rebellions, negotiated treaties that favored her empire, and built a military force that made other species think twice before crossing Xynarix borders. But none of that mattered now. Her 3 daughters were gone. The discovery came during the morning ceremony when the royal attendants arrived to check on the pupation chambers. The 3 crystalline cocoons that should have contained the sleeping princesses were empty. Not broken. Not damaged. Just empty. The attendants stood frozen for a full minute before one of them finally triggered the emergency alert. Within hours, every Xynarix ship in the sector received the same message. The princesses had vanished. No trace. No clues. Just 3 empty chambers where the future of the Empire should have been sleeping. Ambassador Theln took charge of the investigation. He was old by Xynarix standards, his carapace scarred from a dozen wars, his multiple eyes permanently narrowed in suspicion. He didn't believe in accidents or mysteries. Someone had taken the princesses, and he would find them. The Galactic Council Station became his headquarters. Representatives from every known species were summoned for questioning. The Velkari claimed innocence, their amphibious forms quivering with fear. The Torvan, massive and stone-like, insisted they had no interest in Xynarix politics. Even the telepathic Mindari opened their thoughts for inspection, proving they knew nothing. Days turned into weeks. Theln's frustration grew with each dead end. How could 3 royal princesses, each carrying biotrackers and protected by ceremonial magic older than most civilizations, simply disappear? It defied logic. It defied everything he knew about security and protocol. The Queen offered a reward that could buy entire star systems. Bounty hunters and mercenaries flooded known space, chasing every rumor and whisper. They found nothing. Meanwhile, 3,000 light-years away, Captain Jake Mitchell was having a very different kind of day. The Morning Star wasn't much to look at. It was a mid-sized cargo hauler, the kind that moved mining equipment and raw materials between asteroid belts and processing stations. Jake had bought it with his savings after leaving the Earth Defense Fleet, deciding he'd rather haul rocks than take orders from admirals who'd never left their comfortable offices. His crew was small. Kelly Davis, his first officer, handled navigation and kept the ship running when Jake's attention wandered. Troy Bennett managed the cargo bay and somehow kept their ancient engines from exploding. Lisa Park ran communications and made sure they actually got paid for their deliveries. The shipment from the Kelmar Mining Corporation seemed routine. Ore samples, geological survey equipment, and a few crates marked as crystalline formations for research. Jake signed the manifest without reading it too carefully. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was opening one of the crystal crates in his quarters instead of leaving it sealed until delivery. The 3 formations were beautiful. Each one was roughly the size of a basketball, glowing with internal light. One shimmered with pearl-white luminescence. Another pulsed with deep scarlet. The third radiated soft azure blue. Jake had hauled a lot of cargo in his 5 years as an independent captain, but he'd never seen anything quite like these. Probably worth a fortune, he muttered, rotating the pearl-white crystal in his hands. It felt warm. Almost alive. That's when it cracked. Jake nearly dropped it as fissures spread across the surface. Light poured from the gaps, bright enough to make him squint. The crystal split open like an egg, and something small tumbled into his hands. It looked like someone had crossed a butterfly with a kitten and added a dozen too many eyes. The creature was no bigger than his hand, covered in soft down that shimmered pearl-white. Tiny wings, still wet and crumpled, twitched against its back. Multiple eyes, each one a different shade of silver, blinked up at him. It made a sound somewhere between a chirp and a purr. "What the hell?" Jake whispered. The other 2 crystals began cracking. Within minutes, he had 3 of the creatures. Pearl-white, scarlet-red, and azure blue. They were weak, barely able to move, and making pitiful little noises that tugged at something deep in Jake's chest. He'd grown up with dogs and cats back on Earth. He recognized the sound of hungry babies when he heard it. Kelly burst into his quarters. "Jake, what's that noise?" "It sounds like," she stopped, staring at the creatures now crawling weakly across his bunk. "Please tell me those aren't what I think they are." "I have no idea what they are," Jake admitted. "But they are starving." "Jake, unknown alien species. Quarantine protocols. Remember those." He was already wrapping the creatures in his spare blankets, pulling up the ship's database on his tablet. They're babies, Kelly. Look at them. The pearl-white one chirped again, nuzzling against his hand. Its skin was cold. Kelly sighed, recognizing the look on his captain's face. Fine. But if they eat us in our sleep, I'm saying I told you so. Jake spent the next hour mixing nutrient paste and trying to feed them with an improvised bottle. The creatures latched on eagerly, their tiny bodies warming as they ate. When they finally fell asleep, curled together in a nest of blankets on his lap, Jake pulled up the galactic news feeds. The top story made his blood run cold. The Xynarix Empire was tearing the galaxy apart looking for 3 missing princesses. The images showed massive, armored warriors with crystalline carapaces and wings that could slice through steel. Jake looked down at the 3 tiny, fragile creatures sleeping peacefully against his chest. They chirped softly in their sleep. No way, he said. These can't be them. Look at the size difference. But deep down, in a place he didn't want to acknowledge, he already knew the truth. The galaxy had never seen the Xynarix Empire in such disarray. Ambassador Theln's investigation had expanded to include over 40 species, hundreds of star systems, and thousands of potential witnesses. Every lead turned into smoke. Every promising tip led nowhere. The frustration was eating him alive. He stood before the Galactic Council, his mandibles clicking in barely controlled rage. Someone knows something. 3 princesses don't simply vanish into space. Check every ship manifest. Question every cargo hauler. Search every remote station. The council members exchanged nervous glances. The Valkyrie representative spoke cautiously. Ambassador, we've been searching for 6 weeks. Perhaps we need to consider that the princesses might have been destroyed rather than taken. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Theln's eyes fixed on the Valkyrie with predatory focus. If my queens are dead, then entire worlds will burn. Keep searching. Back on the Morning Star, Jake Mitchell's life had become wonderfully complicated. He'd named them Pearl, Scarlet, and Azure based on their coloring. It seemed simple enough, and they responded to the names with happy chirps. Over the past weeks, they'd grown from palm size to roughly the size of house cats. Their wings had dried and strengthened, letting them flutter short distances around his quarters. Pearl was the curious one. She'd figured out how to open cabinet doors within the first week and had a habit of reorganizing Jake's belongings into neat geometric patterns. He'd find his tools arranged by size and color, his datapad stacked in perfect pyramids. It should have been annoying, but watching her work with such intense concentration made him smile. Scarlet was the brave one. She was always the first to investigate new sounds or explore unfamiliar corners of the ship. When Troy brought a malfunctioning servo into Jake's quarters to fix, Scarlet had immediately climbed on top of it, chirping protectively until she was sure it wasn't dangerous. She appointed herself the guardian of their little family. Azure was the gentle one. She stayed close to Jake, preferring to curl up against his chest while he worked at his terminal. She developed a habit of humming, a soft melodic sound that seemed to resonate with the ship's engines. Lisa swore the Morning Star ran smoother when Azure was humming. Jake had moved them into his quarters permanently, setting up hammocks near his bunk and a small feeding station. He'd ordered specialized nutrients from 3 different stations, trying to figure out what they needed. They seemed to thrive on a mix of crystalline minerals dissolved in protein paste. It cost him a small fortune, but watching them eat with such enthusiasm made it worth every credit. Kelly caught him one evening, hand-feeding Azure while Pearl and Scarlet played some kind of chasing game around his feet. You know this is crazy, right? Probably, Jake admitted, not looking up. Azure chirped and nuzzled his palm, asking for more. They're getting smarter, Jake. Yesterday I caught Pearl accessing the navigation console. She was looking at star charts. She's curious. Smart kids explore. Smart kids? Jake, listen to yourself. These aren't kids. We don't even know what species they are. The database has nothing. Not even close matches. Jake finally looked up. So what do you want me to do? Dump them at the nearest station? Hand them over to some research facility where they'll spend their lives in cages? Kelly sat down across from him. I want you to be realistic. They're growing fast. In a few months, they might be bigger than us. What if they're dangerous? Scarlet chose that moment to trip over her own feet, tumbling across the floor in a tangle of wings and limbs. She chirped indignantly, and Pearl rushed over to check on her sister, making concerned cooing sounds. Jake raised an eyebrow at Kelly. Terrifying. You're impossible. I'm a captain making a decision about my ship. They stay. The close call came 3 weeks later. The Morning Star was passing through the Kelvian sector when a Xynarix patrol vessel appeared on their sensors. It wasn't unusual. The Empire had ships everywhere now, stopping and inspecting every vessel they encountered. But Jake's heart still hammered in his chest as the massive warship moved alongside them. This is Xynarix battle cruiser Vengeance. Prepare for boarding inspection. Jake looked at Kelly. Get them hidden. Now. He scooped up Pearl and Azure while Kelly grabbed Scarlet. They rushed the three into Jake's personal quarters, the most shielded room on the ship. Stay quiet, Jake whispered, stroking Pearl's head. Please, just stay quiet. The three seemed to sense his fear. They huddled together in the corner, wings folded tight, eyes wide. The Xynarix inspector was exactly what Jake expected. Massive, armored, with an expression that suggested he'd rather be crushing enemies than searching cargo ships. 2 warrior drones followed him, their weapons humming with barely restrained energy. Captain Mitchell, the inspector said, his translator giving his voice a metallic edge. We're searching for 3 royal princesses. Have you encountered any Xynarix vessels or personnel in the last 60 days? No, sir. Just cargo runs. Mining equipment mostly. The inspector's multiple eyes swept the bridge with professional efficiency. We'll scan your ship. Biosignatures, cargo manifests, communication logs. Standard procedure. Jake's mouth went dry, but he nodded. Of course. Whatever you need. The scan took 15 minutes. Jake watched the inspector's handheld device cycle through different spectrums, searching for any trace of Xynarix DNA. Kelly stood rigid at the navigation console, her knuckles white. Troy and Lisa tried to look busy at their stations. In Jake's quarters, the 3 princesses remained silent. Azure had her face buried against Pearl's side. Scarlet's wings trembled slightly. The inspector finally lowered his scanner. Nothing. Your ship is clean. He looked around the bridge with barely concealed contempt. Humans? You live in these small ships, doing small jobs. I don't understand your species. We get by, Jake said carefully. The Empire would offer you better opportunities. Structure. Purpose. Order. The inspector moved toward the door, then paused. You keep pets on this vessel. Jake's heart stopped. Sir. I detected what might be animal biosigns. Faint. Common among human ships, I'm told. Your kind gets lonely without your furry companions. Just old sensor echoes probably. This ship's been hauling biological samples for years. The inspector made a sound that might have been a laugh. Weak. Needing animals for emotional comfort. This is why humans will never be a major power. He stepped through the airlock. Safe travels, Captain. The moment the Xynarix ship pulled away, Jake collapsed into his chair. His hands were shaking. Kelly let out a breath she'd been holding. That was too close. Jake went straight to his quarters. The 3 princesses rushed to him, chirping frantically, climbing over each other to reach him. Pearl wrapped her tiny arms around his neck. Scarlet pressed against his chest. Azure hummed her comforting melody. It's okay, he whispered, holding all 3. You're safe. I've got you. But he knew the truth. The inspection had worked because the princesses were still juveniles. Their biosignatures had changed during metamorphosis. But as they continued growing, as they developed into their adult forms, the scans would eventually detect them. Time was running out, and Jake had no idea what he was going to do about it. The changes started small. Jake noticed them first during feeding time, about 2 months after the crystals had opened. Pearl had always been particular about eating, but now she'd pause between bites, her multiple eyes focusing on something Jake couldn't see. She'd tilt her head, listening to sounds beyond human hearing range, her antennae twitching with each invisible signal. Scarlet started building things. Not the simple geometric arrangements from before, but actual structures. She'd secrete a clear resin from glands near her mouth, shaping it into intricate towers and bridges that hardened within minutes. The constructions appeared in corners of Jake's quarters, growing more complex each day. Some had chambers and tunnels. Others looked almost like miniature buildings with doorways and windows. Azure's humming evolved into something else entirely. The simple melody became layered, multiple tones weaving together in harmonies that shouldn't have been possible from a single throat. The ship's systems responded to her songs. Lights would dim or brighten. The engines would purr more smoothly. Once, when she sang a particularly high note, every screen on the bridge flickered in synchronization. This is getting weird, Troy said, watching one of Scarlet's resin towers grow in the corner of the cargo bay. That thing is taller than me now. Jake ran his hand over the smooth surface. It was warm to the touch, and the internal structure was visible through the translucent material. Chambers connected by corridors. Support beams arranged in patterns that looked almost mathematical. She's smart. They all are. Smart is one thing. This is something else. Troy pointed at etchings along the tower's base. Symbols. Language. Jake, they're not just building. They're writing. Kelly called an emergency meeting in the galley that night. All 4 crew members squeezed around the small table while the 3 princesses slept in Jake's quarters. We need to talk about them, Kelly said. Really talk. No more pretending this is normal. Lisa pulled up data on her tablet. I've been monitoring their growth rate. They've tripled in size in 8 weeks. At this rate, they'll be our size in another month. Maybe bigger. They accessed the main computer last week, Kelly added. Pearl got through 3 security protocols before I noticed. She was downloading star charts and linguistic databases. They're learning, Jake said. That's good, isn't it? It means they're developing normally. Normally for what? Kelly's voice rose. We don't know what they are, Jake. We don't know what they'll become. What if they're dangerous? They're not dangerous. You don't know that. Jake stood up, his chair scraping against the metal floor. I know them. I've spent every day with them for 2 months. I've watched them play and learn and grow. Pearl is curious and gentle. Scarlet is protective and brave. Azure is sensitive and kind. They're not monsters. No one said they're monsters, Troy interjected carefully. But Kelly has a point. We need to know what they are. Where they came from. Jake had been avoiding this conversation. Avoiding the research that might confirm his deepest fear. But he couldn't hide anymore. Fine. I'll find out. He spent the next 3 days searching every database he could access. Biological archives. Xenology reports. Even restricted military files that cost him a month's profits to hack into. Nothing matched. No species had this combination of features. No known civilization used resin construction or harmonic communication like Azure's songs. Then Azure changed everything. Jake was reading to them like he did most evenings. An old Earth story about a boy who could fly. The 3 princesses were curled around him on his bunk, their bodies now large enough that they barely fit together. Pearl's head rested on his shoulder. Scarlet's wing draped across his lap. Azure pressed against his side, her eyes half closed in contentment. He reached the part where the boy returned home after his adventures. Azure suddenly stiffened. Her eyes snapped open, all of them at once, glowing within a light. Before Jake could react, images flooded his vision. Not his vision. Azure's memories. He saw a palace made entirely of crystal, towers reaching toward a purple sky. Thousands of Xynarics moving through corridors, their wings catching light and scattering rainbows. He saw a massive chamber where a queen sat on a throne, her form so large she seemed to merge with the architecture itself. 3 small crystalline eggs rested before her, and she sang to them, a song of such complexity and beauty that Jake's human mind struggled to comprehend it. The memory shifted. Workers moving the eggs. A mistake. Confusion. The eggs being placed in storage containers marked for off-world shipment. Darkness. Cold. Then light again as the crystals awakened in Jake's quarters, 3 tiny beings emerging into an alien world with no mother to guide them. Jake gasped as the vision released him. Azure was trembling, tears streaming from her eyes. Pearl and Scarlet had seen it too through whatever connection they shared. All 3 were making sounds Jake had never heard before. Not chirps or hums. Keening wails of loss and confusion. Oh God, Jake whispered. You're them. You're actually them. He pulled up the galactic news feeds with shaking hands. The images of the missing princesses showed fully grown Xynarix warriors, fierce and imposing. But he understood now. Those images showed what they would become, not what they were. The entire galaxy was searching for adults because no one realized the princesses had pupated early. They transformed into their larval stage prematurely, triggered by stress or environmental factors during transport. Everyone was looking for warriors. No one was looking for children. Pearl crawled into his lap, wrapping her arms around his waist. She was crying. They were all crying. These weren't just 3 random creatures he'd rescued. They were royalty. The future of an empire. And they'd bonded with him instead of their own people. Kelly appeared in the doorway. Jake, I heard, what's wrong with them? He looked up at her, his own eyes wet. I know what they are. I know where they came from. And? We're in so much trouble. The next morning, Jake gathered his crew and told them everything. He showed them the memory Azure had shared, played recordings of the galactic news reports, and laid out the impossible situation they were in. The entire Xynarix Empire is looking for them, Lisa said quietly. Every ship, every patrol, every bounty hunter in known space. We have to give them back, Kelly said, though her voice lacked conviction. Jake, we have to. This isn't some moral dilemma. These are the daughters of the most powerful queen in the galaxy. Jake looked toward his quarters where the three princesses were sleeping, exhausted from their emotional night. And send them back to what? Azure showed me what their life was supposed to be like. Cold. Sterile. They'd be raised as weapons and political tools. No warmth. No stories. No choice in their own futures. That's their culture, Troy said. We can't just decide it's wrong. Can't I? Jake stood up, his voice hardening. They bonded with me. With us. They chose this life even if they didn't know they were choosing. You've seen how happy they are. How much they've learned. You want to rip them away from that and hand them over to an empire that treats emotions like weakness. They're not yours to keep, Kelly said. And they're not the empire's property either. They're people. Young people who deserve a chance to decide their own future. The argument continued for hours. Troy sided with Kelly. Lisa remained neutral. But in the end, it was Jake's ship, and the decision was his to make. That afternoon, he sat with Pearl, Scarlet, and Azure in his quarters. They were bigger now, nearly his size, their features becoming more defined. Pearl's wings had developed intricate patterns. Scarlet's carapace showed hints of armor plating. Azure's eyes held depths of intelligence that were almost frightening. I need to tell you something, Jake said. About who you really are. They listened as he explained everything. Their mother. Their empire. The search that had consumed the galaxy for months. The danger they were all in now. He expected fear. Confusion. Maybe anger that he'd kept the truth from them. Instead, Pearl reached out and took his hand. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear despite never having used human language before. The words came haltingly, pulled from the databases she'd been studying. We know. Remembered, days ago. Still, choose you. Scarlet nodded, her multiple eyes fixed on Jake with absolute certainty. You, our father now. You, chose us first. Azure's harmonics shifted into something that translated as pure emotion. Love. Gratitude. Belonging. Jake pulled all three into an embrace, and he made a decision that would change everything. They would run. They would hide. And if the Xynarix Empire wanted these three back, they'd have to go through him first. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. A Xynarix artifact dealer named Vex, working out of a grimy station in the outer reaches, finally checked his transaction records after seeing the reward notice for the 100th time. He'd sold 3 Royal Emergence crystals to the Kelmar Mining Corporation 6 months ago. At the time, he'd thought they were standard geological samples. The realization that he'd accidentally sold the Empire's princesses made him rush to contact Ambassador Thelm. The ambassador's reaction was immediate and terrifying. Within hours, every Xynarix warship in 3 sectors changed course, converging on human space. The mining corporation's records showed the crystals had been shipped to various human vessels. One of them was the Morning Star. Jake received the emergency broadcast while the ship was docked at Waystation 7 for supplies. His blood turned to ice as he watched Queen Vesra herself appear on every screen across the station. She was even more massive than he'd imagined, her crystalline carapace reflecting light like a living prism. Her wings, folded against her back, could have wrapped around his entire ship. The human vessel Morning Star is harboring my daughters, the Queen's voice boomed through the translation matrix. Captain Mitchell will surrender them immediately, or humanity will face the full might of the Xynarix Empire. You have 24 hours to comply. The station erupted into chaos. Every human ship began emergency departure procedures. No one wanted to be anywhere near the Morning Star when the Xynarix fleet arrived. Within an hour, Jake's ship was completely isolated at the docking bay, like a disease everyone was afraid to catch. Kelly burst onto the bridge. Jake, we need to leave. Now. Before they get here. And go where? Jake asked quietly. They have our ship ID. They'll track us anywhere we go. Troy was already plotting jump coordinates. We could try the Badlands. Lose them in the asteroid fields. With 3 Xynarix battle cruisers on our tail? We wouldn't last an hour. Jake looked toward his quarters where Pearl, Scarlet, and Azure were watching the broadcasts. They'd grown even more in the past weeks. Pearl now stood as tall as Jake, her wings fully developed and capable of actual flight in low gravity. Scarlet's armor had hardened into plates that could probably deflect small arms fire. Azure's harmonics had become so sophisticated she could communicate complex ideas through pure sound. They were beautiful, powerful, and utterly terrified. Jake walked into his quarters and sat down among them. Pearl immediately pressed against his side, her wings wrapping around him protectively. "Scary," she said. Her grasp of human language had improved dramatically. "Mother angry." "She's not angry at you," Jake said gently. "She's angry at me. She thinks I stole you." Scarlet's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Not stolen. We chose. We chose you." Azure's harmonics carried waves of distress. Through their bond, Jake could feel what she was feeling. Fear of returning to a life she'd never known. Sadness at the thought of leaving the only family she remembered. But also guilt. Guilt that her choices were putting Jake and his crew in danger. "Hey," Jake said, pulling all three closer. "None of this is your fault. You hear me? You didn't ask to be shipped across the galaxy in a mining crate. You didn't ask to hatch in my quarters instead of a palace. And you definitely didn't ask for any of this." "But Mother needs us," Pearl said softly. "Empire needs us. We are princesses. Have responsibilities." Jake's heart broke at how mature she sounded. These three had grown up so fast, learning about duty and sacrifice while most kids their age should have been playing and exploring. "You're also people. You deserve to have a say in your own lives." Lisa's voice crackled over the comm. "Jake, we've got incoming. Zynaric's fleet just entered the sector. 3 battle cruisers and a dreadnought. They'll be here in 2 hours." Kelly appeared in the doorway. "Decision time, Captain. Do we run or do we surrender?" Jake looked at the 3 princesses. "It's not my decision. It's theirs." The silence stretched for a long moment. Finally, Scarlet spoke, her voice carrying the weight of someone much older. "We talk to Mother. We explain. We make her understand." "She might not listen," Jake warned. "She might just take you and destroy us anyway." "Then we fight," Scarlet said simply. "Together." Pearl nodded. "Father taught us. Family protects family. We protect you." Azure's harmonics shifted into something fierce and determined. Through their connection, Jake felt her resolve. She would not let him be harmed. None of them would. "All right," Jake said, standing up. "Then we do this together. Kelly, open a channel to the Zynaric's fleet. Let's talk to them before they start shooting." The next hour was spent preparing. Jake put on his dress uniform, the one he'd worn during his time in the defense fleet. The princesses arranged themselves around him, practicing what they would say. They were scared, but they were also determined. Whatever happened, they would face it as a family. When the Zynaric's fleet arrived, it blotted out the stars. The dreadnought alone was 10 times the size of Waystation 7. Weapons ports lined its hull like eyes of some ancient predator. The 3 battle cruisers took up flanking positions, creating a triangle of death around the station. Ambassador Theln's face appeared on the main screen. "Captain Mitchell. You will bring the princesses to Docking Bay 7 immediately. Any delay or resistance will be met with lethal force." Jake took a breath. "Ambassador, the princesses wish to speak with their mother. Directly. They have things they need to say. You are in no position to make demands, human." Pearl stepped forward into the camera's view. Even though she'd grown, even though her features were becoming more refined and regal, she was still clearly young. Her voice carried across the channel with surprising strength. "I am Princess Pearl, first daughter of Queen Vessera. I demand an audience with my mother. That is my right under Zynaric's law." Theln's expression shifted from anger to shock. He'd been searching for missing children for months, but seeing Pearl standing there, alive and healthy, seemed to break through his warrior's composure for just a moment. "Your Highness, you're alive. Well, growing strong." Pearl's wings spread slightly, a gesture of confidence. "My sisters and I wish to speak with our mother. Will you deny us this right?" The channel went silent for several minutes. Jake could imagine the frantic communications happening on the dreadnought. Finally, a new figure appeared on the screen, and everyone on the Morning Star felt the urge to kneel. Queen Vessera filled the entire display. Her presence was overwhelming, ancient power radiating from every line of her massive form. Her multiple eyes focused on the camera with intensity that made Jake's survival instinct scream at him to run. "My daughters," the Queen said, and for the first time, Jake heard emotion in a Xynaric's voice. Not anger. Not rage. Something deeper. Pain. Loss. Desperate hope. You live. We live, Mother, Pearl said. The three princesses stood together, wings touching, presenting a united front. We are healthy. We are strong. We have learned much. Who took you? Who stole you from me? The queen's voice hardened. I will reduce their worlds to ash. No one stole us, Scarlet said. We were moved by mistake during pupation. We emerged far from home. We would have died, but Captain Jake Mitchell saved us. Fed us. Protected us. Taught us. The queen's eyes shifted to Jake. He forced himself to meet her gaze, though every nerve in his body wanted to look away. You. Human. You have my daughters. Yes, Your Majesty, Jake said, proud that his voice didn't shake. They hatched on my ship. I didn't know who they were. I just knew they needed help. And now you know. Yet you do not surrender them willingly. You run. You hide. You make demands. The queen's carapace seemed to darken. Give me one reason why I should not destroy you and take what is mine. Jake felt the princesses tense beside him. Before he could answer, Azure stepped forward. Her harmonics filled the channel, translating into words but carrying layers of emotion underneath. Because we bonded with him, Mother. The sacred bond of emergence. He was there when we opened our eyes. He was there for our first meal. Our first words. Our first flight. He is our guardian by ancient law. You cannot simply take us. The queen went very still. Around them, Jake could hear gasps from the Xynaric's crew. Ambassador Theln looked like he'd been struck. The bond, the queen whispered. You formed the emergence bond with a human. We did not know he was not Xynaric's, Pearl said. We were infants. We knew only that he was warm, kind, and kept us safe. By the time we understood, the bond was complete. The queen's silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, her voice came again, quieter but somehow more dangerous. Come to my ship. All of you. We will discuss this matter face to face. It wasn't a request. It was a command from a queen who had never been denied. Jake looked at his crew. Kelly shook her head frantically. Troy mouthed the word trap. Lisa's expression said they were all going to die. But the princesses were already moving toward the airlock. We go together, Pearl said. Father comes with us. He is part of this. And so Jake Mitchell, cargo captain and former defense pilot, prepared to board a Xynaric's dreadnought to face a queen who could order his death with a single word. The princesses flanked him as they walked through the docking tube, their wings spread protectively. Whatever happened next, they would face it as a family. The interior of the Xynaric's dreadnought was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Crystalline corridors pulsed with bioluminescent light, changing colors as they walked. The architecture seemed alive, walls rippling and shifting to create paths. Everything was scaled for beings much larger than humans. Jake felt like a child walking through a cathedral built for giants. Hundreds of Xynaric's lined the corridors, warrior drones and workers alike. They stopped their tasks to watch as the princesses passed, their antennae twitching with signals Jake couldn't interpret. Some bowed. Others made clicking sounds that might have been prayers or greetings. The air hummed with their collective presence. Pearl, Scarlet, and Azure walked with their wings held high, their bearing regal despite their youth. But Jake could feel their nervousness through the bond they shared. Azure's harmonics trembled slightly. Scarlet's armor plates shifted with tension. Pearl kept glancing back at Jake, making sure he was still there. The throne room was massive enough to dock 3 ships inside. The ceiling disappeared into shadows above, and the walls were covered in living crystal formations that grew like frozen waterfalls. At the far end, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single enormous gemstone, sat Queen Vessera. She was even more imposing in person. Her body was easily 20 feet tall, her wings spanning twice that when fully extended. Intricate patterns covered her carapace, each one representing centuries of rule and countless battles won. Her multiple eyes tracked their approach with predatory precision. Ambassador Theln stood beside the throne, along with a dozen other high-ranking Xynaric's officials. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. One of them, an elderly Xynarix with a scarred carapace, kept his eyes fixed on Jake with open contempt. Approach, the queen commanded. They walked forward until they stood at the base of the throne. The princesses bowed, a gesture that seemed instinctive despite never being taught. Jake bowed as well, figuring respect couldn't hurt his chances of survival. Queen Vessera leaned forward, her gaze sweeping over her daughters. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a voice that carried unexpected softness, "Let me look at you. My daughters. My precious ones. I thought you were dead." "We live, Mother," Pearl said. "We are healthy and strong. Because of him." The Queen's eyes shifted to Jake, and the softness vanished. "This human. This creature who has no wings, no carapace, no understanding of our ways. You bonded with him instead of your own people." Jake felt the weight of her judgment. Before he could respond, Scarlet stepped forward. "He saved our lives, Mother. When we emerged, we were alone and dying. He could have left us. Could have thrown us out an airlock. Instead, he fed us. Warmed us. Protected us when he had no reason to. He kept you from your empire," the scarred official spoke up. "From your destiny. From your mother who searched the stars for months, tearing apart planets to find you. He kept us alive." Azur's harmonics rang with steel. "We would have perished in those first hours without his care. There would be nothing for you to find." The Queen rose from her throne, her full height making Jake's knees weak. She descended the steps until she stood directly before them. Her shadow engulfed the group. "The bond of emergence is sacred among our people. It determines loyalty, hierarchy, and belonging. For 10,000 years, it has always been between Xynarix and Xynarix. Never with an outsider. Never with prey species." The word prey hung in the air like a threat. "But the law is clear," Pearl said quietly. "The bond, once formed, cannot be broken without destroying us. You taught us this, Mother. It is in the old stories, the ancient codes. To sever an emergence bond is to kill the one who was bonded." Queen Vesra's wings flared slightly. "So I must accept this? Accept that my daughters belong to a human who pilots a cargo ship and knows nothing of duty, honor, or empire?" Jake had been quiet long enough. His crew always said he had a talent for saying exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time. He figured now was as good a time as any to prove them right. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. "I don't know much about your empire or your ways. But I know your daughters. I've watched them grow for months now. I've seen Pearl's curiosity as she explores every new idea. I've seen Scarlet's courage when she faces something unknown. I've seen Azur's compassion when she comforts her sisters. They're amazing. Smart. Brave. Kind. And yes, they're bonded to me. But that doesn't mean they belong to me." The Queen tilted her head, a gesture that reminded Jake of Pearl. "Explain." "They're people, not property. Not mine. Not yours. Not the Empire's. They're three young individuals who deserve a chance to figure out who they want to be." Jake took a breath. "You want to know what I've been teaching them? Stories. Earth stories about heroes and adventures. Math, because Pearl loves numbers. History, because Scarlet wants to understand how civilizations rise and fall. Music, because Azur hears the universe differently than the rest of us. I've been teaching them to think for themselves." "Dangerous lessons for future rulers," the scarred official muttered. "Maybe," Jake agreed. "Or maybe that's exactly what future rulers need. The ability to question. To choose. To care about more than just duty and tradition." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "You dare criticize how we raise our young? I dare say your daughters deserve better than being raised as weapons. They deserve warmth. Laughter. The chance to be kids before they have to be princesses." Jake felt his anger rising despite the danger. "You spent months searching for them. But did you ever ask what they want? What they need? Or were you just planning to slot them back into their predetermined roles like nothing happened?" The throne room fell deathly silent. Several officials made angry clicking sounds. Ambassador Theln's hand moved toward his weapon. Jake realized he might have just talked himself into an early grave. Then Queen Vesra did something no one expected. She laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh or a mocking one. It was the sound of someone confronting an uncomfortable truth. "Bold. Foolish, but bold. Perhaps that is why my daughters chose you. The Xynarix respect strength, and you show strength in facing certain death to speak your mind." She turned to her daughters. "Tell me true. Do you wish to return to the life that was planned for you? Training from dawn until dusk. Study of warfare and politics. The cold efficiency of the palace. No stories. No music. No human to read you tales of flying boys and adventures." The three princesses looked at each other, having a silent conversation through whatever connection they shared. Finally, Pearl spoke for all of them. We wish for both, Mother. We want to know you. To learn our heritage. To understand what it means to be Xynarix. But we also want Jake. We want the warmth he showed us. The choice he gave us. The love he shared freely without expecting anything in return. Love, the Queen repeated the word as if tasting it. A human concept. A universal concept, Azur's harmonics corrected gently. We feel your love, Mother. It drove you to search the stars. It brought you here. But we feel Jake's love too. Different, but no less real. Why must we choose between them? The Queen returned to her throne, settling into it with a weariness that suggested the weight of centuries. You ask me to accept a bond with a human. To allow him influence over the future of my empire. To trust that his teachings will not corrupt or weaken you. They won't, Scarlet said firmly. They'll make us stronger. We've learned that strength isn't just about power or fear. It's about connection. Understanding. The courage to be vulnerable sometimes. These are lessons that will make us better rulers, not worse ones. The Queen looked at Jake again, studying him with those ancient, calculating eyes. What do you want from this, human? Wealth? Power? A position in my empire? I want them to be happy, Jake said simply. That's it. That's all I've ever wanted. Impossible. No one wants so little. Then maybe that's another lesson worth learning, Your Majesty. That sometimes caring about someone means wanting what's best for them, even if it costs you everything. Another long silence. Jake could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. The officials whispered among themselves. Ambassador Theln looked confused, as if the conversation had gone somewhere his tactical training hadn't prepared him for. Finally, Queen Vessera spoke. I propose a compromise. One that honors both the bond you share and the responsibilities my daughters must accept. She stood, her wings spreading in a gesture of proclamation. Captain Jake Mitchell, you will serve as guardian teacher to the royal house. My daughters will remain with you for half of each year, continuing their education in your ways. The other half, they will return here to learn what it means to be Xynarix. When they reach maturity, they will choose their own path forward. The officials erupted in protest. The scarred one spoke loudest. Your Majesty, this is unprecedented. A human with access to the royal family? Influence over future queens? Silence, Vessera commanded, and the room obeyed instantly. My daughters have shown me something I had forgotten. That strength comes in many forms. That wisdom can be found in unexpected places. If a human cargo captain can teach future rulers lessons I cannot, then perhaps we Xynarix have been too proud for too long. She looked at her daughters with something that might have been pride. You will bridge two worlds. Carry the strength of the Xynarix and the heart of the humans. Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs. Pearl, Scarlet, and Azure rushed forward, their harmonics creating a symphony of joy and relief. They surrounded their mother, who wrapped her massive wings around them in an embrace that was surprisingly gentle. Through the bond, Jake felt their happiness, their love for both families finally acknowledged. The Queen looked at Jake over her daughters' heads. Approach, Captain. Jake walked forward on shaking legs. The Queen extended one enormous clawed hand. Jake took it, feeling the strength that could crush his bones like paper. Thank you, Queen Vessera said quietly, for his ears only. For keeping them safe. For teaching them to laugh. For showing them that power without compassion is merely tyranny. These are lessons I failed to learn until I almost lost everything that mattered. They are special, Jake said. All three of them. You should be proud. I am. And I owe you a debt that can never be repaid. I don't want payment. Just let me be part of their lives. Let me watch them grow into whatever they're meant to be. The Queen's expression softened slightly. That, Captain Mitchell, I can promise. 3 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of a new ship, watching the stars stream past. The vessel was a joint creation, combining human technology with Xynarix bioengineering. Half cargo hauler, half diplomatic transport. A bridge between worlds. Pearl was studying advanced mathematics with a Xynarix scholar in one section. Scarlet was training in combat techniques with Ambassador Theln, who'd become surprisingly fond of the princesses. Azure hummed in the engine room, her harmonics helping the hybrid systems run more efficiently than engineers had thought possible. Kelly walked up beside him. Still can't believe this is our life now. Yeah, Jake agreed. Went from hauling rocks to teaching princesses. Weird career move. You did good, Captain. The galaxy's talking about you. The human who taught an empire about compassion. I just did what felt right. Later that evening, all three princesses crowded into Jake's quarters like always, even though they now had their own massive chambers. They were too big to fit comfortably anymore, wings and limbs tangling together, but none of them cared. Story time, Pearl announced, settling against Jake's side. Scarlet curled up at his feet. The one about the wizard school. Azul hummed contentedly, her harmonics wrapping around them like a blanket. Jake opened the book and began to read. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled past. Two civilizations were learning to understand each other. The galaxy was changing, one story at a time. And in that moment, surrounded by three beings who'd changed his life forever, Jake Mitchell knew exactly where he belonged. Right here, with his family.